The human body is an incredible mechanism that's amazing in its endurance and resilience. Even in the absence of many organs, our body can function perfectly. This is Infinity. And in this episode, I'll tell you about 10 organs that you can easily live without, as well as how much they cost. And before I start, I want to tell you not to forget that it is possible to live without some organs, but it's always better to live with a full set of all organs. I'm not calling you on anything, and I'm just sharing some interesting information with you. I'm sure many of you will like it. So let's go. The first organ in this episode is also the most important one in our body. Surprisingly, it is possible to live without a brain. And I'm not telling jokes about people who aren't the smartest, I'm talking seriously. However, there are nuances. It's impossible to live without a brain at all, but a person can live a full life without some parts of it. So, about 15 to 20 years ago, a man came to a clinic in Marseille and complained of pain in his leg. The doctors thought he had a blood clot, but it turned out that the cause of his pain was the absence of 90% of his brain. He was suffering from hydrocephalus. The disease had almost completely destroyed the gray matter in his head, but that didn't prevent the surviving parts of his brain from taking over the functions of the lost parts. With all this, the man didn't know what was going on in his head until he came to the clinic. History knows of other such cases. For example, in the 1980s, scientists studied the extraordinary case of a student whose brain was literally splashing around in his cerebrospinal fluid. At the same time, this didn't affect the student's abilities in any way. He was very talented and intelligent. Scientists have also repeatedly found people with only half a brain and people born without a cerebellum, all of whom lived quite normal lives. The lungs are very useful organs because it's thanks to them that we breathe. The lungs carry oxygen into the blood and remove carbon dioxide from the body. They do this in pairs, but each lung can do it separately. Both lungs are identical and equipped to function separately from each other. Therefore, a human will be able to live comfortably without a part of their lung, or even without one lung at all. Of course, one can't become a professional diver or the best runner on the planet with only one lung, but it will suffice to give a human a great and fulfilling life. Many people live with one lung, having lost a second organ after surgery. We've done with the lungs, but what about the stomach? We only have one stomach, unlike the lungs. It's one of the most important organs in the human body, where food is stored and digested. So its removal would lead to certain death, wouldn't it? Turns out it wouldn't. The stomach is, of course, extremely important, but a person can live without it. Certain cancers and genetic disorders can leave a person with a choice between saying goodbye to their life or their stomach, and people usually choose the latter option. In this case, a gastrectomy is performed. The stomach, or part of it, is removed, and the esophagus is connected directly to the small intestine. This is a very serious surgery and a serious change in the body. But even after this, people continue to live normally. Of course, it'll be necessary to keep a certain diet and to eat little by little because the body will have nowhere to accumulate much food at once. But it is possible to live with this feature. Over time, the body adapts to digest food with the intestines alone. While the baby's in their mother's womb, the spleen is engaged in blood production. It creates red and white blood cells for the baby. Then it takes care of other tasks. It becomes the main source of lymphocytes, produces antibodies, stores old and damaged erythrocytes and platelets, and destroys abnormal blood cells. In an adult, this organ is full with blood flowing through it constantly, so serious injuries to the spleen are potentially very dangerous. Its rupture can lead to massive internal bleeding and death, so sometimes doctors decide to remove the damaged spleen before it bursts. This operation is called a splenectomy. The spleen is removed and the person continues to live peacefully. However, their immunity decreases and the risk of infection increases because the spleen is one of the body's main filters. But if the person takes antibiotics and vitamins in time, there will be no negative consequences of the splenectomy. If you like fast food and unhealthy foods, regularly binge on them and have no health problems, say thank you to your gallbladder. It helps your body to digest fats by secreting bile. The problem is that the gallbladder cannot handle huge amounts of fatty food indefinitely. If a person does not keep the diet at all, they start having problems. For example, gallstones can form in the gallbladder. Sometimes they can be very large. Doctors cannot always remove such stones, so they remove the entire gallbladder instead. It's also possible to live without it. In this case, some of the gallbladder's functions will be taken over by the nearby liver, but the person will have to keep a certain diet. After food travels through the esophagus, stomach, and small intestine, it reaches the colon. At this point, most of the nutrients had already been absorbed by the body. The colon helps form and push through solid waste, and this makes it a very important organ. Nevertheless, it is possible to live without it. If a person has serious problems such as a malignant tumor, polyps, etc., doctors may decide to perform a colectomy. After it, the remaining parts of the intestine gradually adapt and take over the function of the removed colon. The patient will have to keep a special diet and avoid solid food, but they'll live. Reproductive organs. I don't think anyone would want to live without genitals. Nevertheless, there are quite a few people in the world who live without them, and they live quite normally. Without a reproductive system, it's possible to live almost a full life, regardless of whether it's a man or a woman. Some people live without reproductive organs as a result of an accident, for example, a road accident, an attack, and so on. And some have had their reproductive organs removed after being diagnosed with serious diseases. The loss of reproductive organs leads to impaired production of the hormones that regulate the human body, estrogen and testosterone. But this can be compensated by taking special medications. The thyroid gland is located near the throat. It stores iodine, which the body needs for normal development and functioning. It also produces a large number of hormones that control metabolism and cell growth. It turns out that the thyroid affects almost the entire body, and the more surprising is the fact that a person can live without it. Usually, the thyroid gland is removed if there are malignant tumors. In this case, a person who has undergone surgery will have to take special medications and synthetic hormones for the rest of their life. Without these medications, the metabolism will be disrupted and the person will die. But if the person follows the therapy and takes the right medications, their life will be completely normal. And here's something that many people don't have. The appendix is one of the most unnecessary organs in the human body, without which millions of people live comfortably. The appendix used to help absorb cellulose from plant foods, but over time food became more easily digested and the organ ceased to be involved in digestion. It still serves a number of functions, such as supporting intestinal microflora. Nevertheless, the human body has little to lose without the appendix, and the person continues to live peacefully. When inflammation occurs, the appendix is almost always removed. Removing an inflamed appendix is one of the most frequent and easiest surgical procedures. In the vast majority of cases, it has no harmful consequences. And the final one is the kidney. Like the lungs, the kidneys work in pairs and play an important role in the human body. They filter various waste products and toxics from the blood and produce a number of hormones that regulate blood pressure. But, like the other organs in the body, the kidneys are not durable, and under certain conditions, they can fail. The lives of people with kidney failure are supported by a machine for hemodialysis. But it's huge. A person can't carry it with them, and to sit near it constantly isn't an option. But there is an option to remove a sick kidney. A person can live with one kidney, but with the adherence to a diet and some restrictions. This way, a person can live for many years while waiting for a new kidney to be transplanted. Speaking of transplants, this operation is the most common in transplantology. Despite the fact that a kidney's not cheap, it costs $16,000 and more, but it's not as much as some other organs in our bodies. Keep watching to learn about the most expensive human organs that cost a fortune. The leader among all organs in terms of price is the heart. It's probably the most important organ in the human body after the brain. The heart's very expensive. Its price starts at $280,000, and that's just the organ itself. No one needs a heart just like that. A heart transplant is also needed, and it can cost $1.5 million. This enormous price tag can be explained by several reasons. First, unlike a kidney or a lung, a heart donor gives their heart posthumously. Second, heart transplantation is very dangerous, complex, and often ends in the death of the patient. Third, heart disease is the most common cause of death among all people in the world, and heart transplantation is recognized as the most effective way to treat severe heart failure. Even so, there's no guarantee of success. The surgery may fail, or the heart may not establish. But if everything goes right, a patient with a new heart could live about 10 years. To me, all these facts are a great reminder of how important it is to keep an eye on our motor that pumps blood so hard and keeps us alive. From the main motor, we move on to the main filter. The liver is a truly amazing organ. The liver fights all toxic substances, removes breakdown products of chemicals, produces vitamins, transports blood proteins, and much more. Even with that said, the liver can be called the coolest organ in the body, but it also knows how to repair itself. The liver is able to regenerate even if it's lost 70% of its volume. But even such a powerful organ as the liver cannot fight toxins indefinitely, especially if there's a lot of toxins. Often people catch serious liver disease, after which there can be only one solution: a transplant. Buying a liver can cost about $50,000, but for the entire organ, one will have to pay about $400,000. Add to that the transplant, which can cost up to $800,000, and you'll get the sum of about $1 million. Not everyone can afford such a surgery, so it's worth caring about your liver. Once again, we're back to the lungs. As you remember, you can live without one lung, but what do you do to get a new lung? A person can pay about $60,000 to buy an organ from a donor. If a person needs a complete set, they have to pay about $500,000 for a pair of lungs. Biomaterial becomes worthless within a couple of hours after the death of the donor, and the transplant is very complex and requires the highest skills of the highest level surgeons in the world. Hence, the incredible price tag. A lung transplant can cost up to $2 million. The pancreas belongs to the digestive organs. It's one of the most important organs in humans, producing enzymes to digest food. It also produces hormones necessary for metabolism. Diabetes mellitus can ruin the pancreas the most. Then there's two options: either live with this disease, dieting, limiting yourself and injecting yourself with insulin, or paying $10,000 for a new pancreas. It's possible to transplant the organ, thus completely curing yourself of diabetes mellitus. But such a surgery is complex and expensive. The price starts at $100,000 and can be as high as $350,000. But even in this case, the patient will still have to keep a certain diet and limit themselves. That's all, guys. How soon do you think we'll be able to print organs on a 3D printer? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you later.